What's up YouTube? Today I want to talk about some of the more advanced wavetable editing and generating capabilities in Vital. Let's dive in and have a look. So if you guys have been following my channel for a while, you probably know a little bit about how Vital works. I'm going to skip some of the more kind of fundamental basics. I've got a basic blank instance of Vital over here, and we're going to dive into some of the more advanced wavetable capabilities. So for those who don't know, to actually get into your wavetable editor, you click on this little icon over here of the pencil, and this opens up your wavetable window, which has a variety of different ways of generating waveforms. So the basic type is this wave source. This allows you to kind of like connect the dots to create like different types of waveforms. You can create different grid sizes to get more resolution, so to speak. Instead of having to right click and create keyframe, something really handy is you can actually just double click, and that draws a frame in for you. So then we can go ahead here and let's say, for example, just draw like a different type of waveform, something like this. And let's just draw in a third keyframe, and we can just do another type of waveform here, something wonky like this. Let's see how this goes. Okay, so let's span this out. Let's do one in the middle and then the two on the outer edges. So what we've done here is we've created this kind of like a wavetable which blends through these three different shapes that we've created. So at the moment we're not making use of any of the blend modes, and how you actually make use of those is using this little drop down menu over here. So there's 4 different types of blend modes, well 2, but one that's smoother than the other. So we've got a waveform blend. This basically moves each of the nodes to a specific point. So this kind of works using this like waveform draw idea. And then you've got spectral blend, which blends using these spectral bars rather than using like the actual drawing. This can sometimes create these like noisy things here. Can be good, you know, might not be what you want. So there's a variety of different things you can go with. Smooth is just slightly less of those kind of peaks in there. But yeah, waveform blend for these kind of simpler shapes tends to be the better way of doing it. But when you're using like audio waveforms and that kind of stuff and audio files, I find that spectral tends to be the best. You know, more complex stuff, then I would go with spectral. So one of the really cool things about the way that they've designed this wavetable editor is the fact that it's kind of non-destructive. So what I mean by that is that, you know, it doesn't write these into a particular kind of like audio file. You've got the ability to change where these keyframes are. You can actually go in and edit each keyframe, and the blend still remains like smooth. We can add in keyframes where we need. So let's say, for example, add one here. Let's do a simple saw wave again. So this is a little bit easier if you just like avoid these dots, if you want to get like a clean line like that, and then avoid the dots like that to get like a saw wave. And we can actually like go in and draw like a, you know, a ton of different shapes. Let's say like a zigzaggy saw type thing, and then we can just like move them around where we need them. Something really cool about this is that you can like switch the position of these keyframes. So for example, there was this kind of like dead spot here in the middle, and that was obviously because the way that it was like morphing those wavetable frames, it just kind of like created like a dead spot with the harmonics. So we can swap these around to get like the best results. This frame here is not so cool, so we can actually just double click on it and it's gone. So we've got a variety of different wave sources here. So we got wave source, line source, and then audio file source. This would be used when you actually import an audio file, so we're not going to go into that in this episode. But line source is interesting because this allows you to modulate the shape of what we have here, kind of like a a remap, so to speak, where you can kind of like remap the positions of these using this line. So as you can see, like as you draw it, it kind of like modulates that shape that we had there. And then you can like move this and create all sorts of weird things. But this is also, you know, it's not just for kind of like modulating something that you have that's existing here. If we go into another wavetable, we can actually, let's just say, remove this and add a line source. And this is a nice, easy way of creating like very sharp lines, like saw waves. Like if you want to quickly create a ramp up or a ramp down saw wave, you can just do that here. And if there's like a particular place that you want the saw wave to end, I know this is like a trick to get punchier saw waves. If there's like kind of more content happening above the line. So another thing I quickly want to show you that's actually particularly handy is you can go copy and you can actually paste these to a variety of different oscillators in the synth. So say for example you've got something but you want to edit it some more but you're not sure. I mean, the thing is non-destructive, so I mean you can always kind of go back, but to save yourself a bunch of like undos and stuff, you can copy paste and then come back to that later. So you've got a variety of different modifiers here. Phase shift is particularly interesting because this allows you to actually shift the phase of each of these frames or slowly over time. So let's say for example put a keyframe over here, and then this actually works by moving this guy side to side. Then you'll see it's kind of like created this shift in phase between those keyframes. And again, this is non-destructive, so you can kind of place this wherever to create a slower phase shift. Or something even particularly interesting here is you've got these varying styles. So normal is obviously all of the harmonics. You can choose just even and odd harmonics, etc., etc. So all sorts of different ways of shifting the phase. See how on a spectral level it kind of every second harmonic it kind of like shifts the phase of, as opposed to all of them. This is not something that I would usually modulate though. This is something that I would use to kind of fine tune a sound if I needed that in a patch. Then we've got wave window. So this is kind of like used to squash the sides of the wave, like the left and right, almost like in Serum you've got the windowed sync mode, which kind of like squashes the sides so it doesn't clip. So this is particularly interesting if you're drawing like crazy shapes and you kind of want them to always have a zero crossing. But again, you can create keyframes for this, so you can have like, you can have it changing over time. And again, there's also varying styles. So you've got linear and all these different ones. Square, which is like a complete brick wall. Wiggle, which is pretty interesting. So you can stack these up. So we can have like another wave window on top of this and say, keep that on a wiggle as well. Create all sorts of weird things here. So the next one is a frequency filter. This is basically like an actual, you know, like a filter, low pass, high pass, band pass, etc. So this is really cool for creating like squelches and stuff within the actual wavetable. You can filter it into different parts. So let's say, for example, set this to band pass, and then we can go and put in a bunch of nodes here, and then we can create like a sweeping band pass filter just by how we adjust this cutoff and shape over here. So let's just say, actually, I'm going to go back, I'm going to delete all of these, go back to the first one, change the shape down, yeah, like that, and then we can create, because then it'll like duplicate that, and then we can sweep the cutoff up and then down again maybe. Let's see how this sounds. And you can change the position of these as well with this node over here. And let's say, for example, in this middle one, let's open the shape up a little bit so it's not as ringy. Cool, that sounds good. So the next one is a Slew Limiter. This basically just either slows or fastens the rate of change, kind of like a portamento, but for your actual waveform. It's kind of weird, but sometimes interesting. I don't use it too often though. Kind of like a distortion, I guess. Then we have the Wavefolder, my other favorite. So this is just a wavefold distortion, but allows you incredibly huge control over the harmonics. So you can do all sorts of crazy things. And again, because you can like move these around, you can get really creative here with how it shapes the tone. Then we can put in a filter again after that to try kind of like cut out some of those sounds that get too high frequency. Okay, I'm just going to put some MIDI on here, and maybe some low pass filter, some effects, and then play it alongside this track I'm working on, just so it's not so clean. So here, let's put a random modulator over here. So every time a note triggers, it'll randomly cycle through that wavetable. And the last one is Wave Warp, which I guess is similar to kind of Serum's asymmetric, or at least a couple of Serum's warp modes, where you can kind of like squash it side to side or from the outside inwards, if that makes sense. This, I guess, you could use to kind of like distort if you use this Y warp. Say, for example, there's certain parts of this wavetable which get a bit quiet. You can use this Wave Warp to distort those parts. So this is particularly interesting. So what I want to do is let's actually just turn this random modulator off for now. And then when we cycle through this, we can listen for which ones are the softest and maybe just boost those on the Y warp a little bit. That is very, very cool. And because it's non-destructive, we can jump in there and edit absolutely every part of this chain. And when we save this, so let's say for example save to wavetables, let's call this wavetable video example 1, and we go initialize patch, and then we go user, let's look for, we can actually search wavetable video example. We can open this up and you'll see that it retains all of the how can I say, all of the non-destructibility. So if you share a wavetable with somebody, they can jump in there and edit it slightly, and this is such a cool feature because it allows you to fine-tune things over time. You know, a lot of the time with the other wavetable stuff is it kind of like bakes that into the wavetable, and it's very hard to kind of like edit it when you jump back in again. So you can also save this as a kind of like audio and do various things with it. So how to do that is, let's just turn this onto seconds and then turn it down, I believe somewhere around like 5 seconds or so seemed to work for me. It might not in this example. I checked it quickly, but anyway, let's set this LFO to modulate this wavetable position, and then let's right click on here and say resynthesize preset to wavetable. So what this does is it basically plays through the preset and creates a wavetable out of that audio example. So if we then turn off this modulation and we jump in here, we'll see that it's kind of tried to recreate the shape. The phase is a bit off, but I think it's because the phase was on 100% random when I did that, so it's my fault. But anyway, it's recreated this patch without any of that kind of deconstructibility. Let's just see if it sounds the same. This is also a really interesting technique for kind of imprinting effects onto sounds and creating kind of wavetables with those. So let's just say, okay, I've saved that one, so we can right click initialize, and here we've got a basic saw wave. You want to use as little time-based effects as possible, but anything that can kind of like alter the tone. So what we can do is we can use the LFO to modulate this offset parameter, and then the wavetable frames will be playing through that. Let's give it some of these effects as well here. Let's see how this alters the sound. So we can right click, resynthesize preset to wavetable, and then let's turn off all these effects here, and we're going to have to turn this off as well. So this is a nice way of creating those kind of like phasery leads, but you kind of get a lot more control over it because now you can jump into that and edit that wavetable, putting filters on kind of each part and stuff. Let's put a delay on there. Let's play this melody. So I've got this audio sample here, and I want to load this into Vital, and we can play with some of the capabilities of loading audio files. So what I can do is just highlight this. Let's go solo, and then I'm going to export this. We can just pop it into the Wavetables folder in which for Vital. So that's in your documents, I believe. Documents, Vital, user, Wavetables, and you can just export it there. I'm going to call this PIZZ pizza. Now we can jump into Vital, and then let's go into our Wavetables, and then we can search for pizza. There we go. So with this type of thing, we want to set up a envelope to, or an LFO to run through the Wavetables. So here in the audio file source, things are a little bit different, but the idea is kind of the same. You know, if you draw in a keyframe here, for example, it automatically generates like the halfway point of this audio file. And then let's say, for example, if we shift this to like 70,000, then it will play the first part quicker and then slower. It kind of like shifts all the keyframes in between that, the keyframes which you make. There's various things which we can choose here, phase styles, blend modes and stuff. Each one sounds a little bit different. But modulating the time of this like LFO, which is controlling the wavetable position on these kind of like audio file type of things with a random, is a really nice way of creating like granular glitchy type things.